everyone. We talk a lot here at the Holistic Inner Balance podcast about the vagus nerve. We've even gone into details on how to stimulate vagus nerve and how to measure vagus nerve with your pulse. But in this conversation, we are going to take that 1,000 steps further, and we're interviewing an amazing innovator, a great human being, and the founder of the Hoolest device. I love this conversation, and the product, I've actually experienced it, and Hadley mentions later on in the recording that we don't usually do products or supplements or specific brands here. And this one this one made it through the gates, and it's because I'm such a strong believer in it. I think the vagus nerve is really, really important, especially for our emotional and mental health. And my experience using the vagus nerve stimulation device was great. And so if you have situational anxiety, or if you have performance anxiety, or you need a solution that's really quick and really effective, then this is going to be the conversation for you. And the other piece that I think really stood out to me was the conversation getting into the detail about the different directions. I'm looking at my notes, y'all. I took so many notes today about looking at the different directions, the ascending and the descending branches of the vagus nerve, and how to know which may be out of balance for you and what strategies and techniques that you should be using. And Hadley has a really, really good question about what if you aren't in that fight flight kind of activation state, and what do you do if you're in more of a flop state? And Nick has all the answers for that there. Let me read you guys his quick bio. It's really super impressive. He was a competitive golfer. He wanted to do PGA and was absolutely amazing, had a promising career. Everything was looking great, but his nervous system started to get in the way, and he was choking when he went and started the golfing. He would go on the hole, the what is it, Hadley? What is it?
The course, onto the
The
course.
grass. I don't know. I'm not a golfer. And he would get his body knew how to do it. He knew how to do it. He had the skills, but there's something that was getting in his way. And so he went to solve this problem. And he received a Ph.D. in biomedical engineering at ASU. And he is a renowned neuromodulation expert. And he's absolutely, absolutely incredible. You can contact him by going to Hoolest.com, Hoolest. And he's actually really responsive on email, which is nick@hoolest.com. And we'll put all of that information in the bio. But before we jump into the recording, Hadley, any aha moments you want to jump out the gate with?
I mean, I just was geeking out so hard with all of the science that we're talking about and like how it all works. Because I think a lot of times we think, oh, the nervous system, like vagus nerve stimulation, sure, whatever. But we really got into the nitty-gritty of it. And we got into how you can actually figure out what part of your nervous system is affected. And then utilize the proper tools, because sometimes we just think, oh, I just need to use this thing, like cold plunging, which may not actually be effective and might actually be hurting more than it's helping. So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for Dr. Nicole's like three testimonials that she has for this product, because she's used it on herself and also other people, and it's kind of mind-blowing, the results. So
Seriously. Yeah.
let's
All
get
right,
into
everyone.
it.
Yeah. We're going to talk about vagus nerve and strategies, and we're going to talk about you, Mr. Nick.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm
Fantastic.
happy to share as much knowledge as I have on the topic. I've got a unique perspective on it.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of areas in life where it's helpful, but with my backstory, I've got at least one interesting application for it, and that's everything we're doing over here at Hoolest. So
Yeah. So tell me about the name, and then we'll kind of get into the story of how you came up with this idea. But what is Hoolest? Tell me more.
yeah, Hoolest is just a name that I made up when I was a little kid. My last name is Hool, so I just
Uh-huh.
thought I was cool, and instead of saying I'm the coolest, I'm the Hoolest. And it was just like such a dumb little thing. But, I wanted to start a company and was like, I'm terrible at coming up with names for things. So for whatever reason, it just popped in my head. I'm like, let's just call it, Hoolest Performance Technologies. And it kind of aligned a little bit. It's like when you need to be cool, calm under
Yeah.
pressure, like you can be the Hoolest. Like go with the Hoolest if you want to be your coolest, stupid stuff like that.
Oh, that's good. That's
But
not
I like
stupid.
that.
That's
like
good.
it's funny, like I get it all the time. People just they get it right away. When I'm like, yeah, our company's called the Hoolest. And they're like, oh, like, so you're gonna be the Hoolest, the coolest. I'm like, yeah, there you go. Kind of got it. But yeah,
I was thinking that in my brain as I was walking around my office, and I'm like, I'm talking to Nick about the Hoolest device possible. And I'm like, ha ha ha, Nicole, you're so funny. But
yeah,
apparently your younger self already figured that out. And I'm
yeah,
just catching on in 2024.
yeah.
So okay. So tell us about you started in biomedical engineering at Arizona State, right?
Yeah, so I got both my undergrad and my PhD in biomedical engineering and it was all straight through. So 8 straight years of school and just a lot of research, a lot of projects, things like that. Learned about the vagus nerve in school, learned about a lot of other crazy technologies. But yeah, I never really cared that much for like higher education. I've always assumed I would just get my undergrad and go work and do something. But uh, the reason I went in as a biomedical engineer was to solve my own problem with stress and anxiety. I was a competitive golfer growing up. I started playing since I could walk, basically. And when I was 14 years old, I won my first, statewide tournament. And, it's not national, but in the state of Arizona, it's a pretty competitive place to play golf.
Yeah.
And I realized I'm like, okay, this is of all the sports I played growing up, golf seems to be the one I'm best at, and I enjoyed it the most. Something about anything related to the mind. Like I love brain and mind-based games. Like I've loved playing chess growing up with my dad because it's like a
Mm,
mind game. And golf is very much mental. It's like a 90% mental game.
yeah.
So dedicated myself. I wanted to play golf. That was my sport. When I was 16, traveled the country, won a few more, large tournaments with people from all over the country, and started getting, noticed by college coaches, and actually got an offer to join the team at Arizona State University, which if you're from Arizona and you're a golfer, that is the dream school.
Yeah.
That's where Phil Mickelson went. At the time, John Rahm didn't go there, but John Rahm went there. I mean, lots of the all-time great players went through ASU's golf program. So it's like, oh my gosh, I can go play at ASU. I probably wasn't going to be a starter. I might have been lucky to play a couple tournaments. I wasn't that good, but either way, it was like, this is the dream. And
Yeah.
then for whatever reason, I guess first the coach got fired, several months after I had contact with him and he offered me a spot. And then I had a few tournaments where I kind of choked under pressure. And just the combination of, oh man, I have to impress this new coach at ASU if he wants to give me a spot. Suddenly I'm not performing as well and I'm getting in my head. And it just culminated into like I started getting these severe stress responses every single time I'd step up to the first tee. It would happen on the golf course, like randomly. And it was just a miserable experience because you go from being one of the top players, in the state, possibly country, and then suddenly you just cannot compete in tournaments anymore. It was like, what the heck is happening? And I knew it wasn't my talent. Like talent didn't just go away. It was something to do with my brain or my body. The physical symptoms were like I'm on the first tee and it's just that chest anxiety, right? Heart just beating out of my chest, throat
Mhm.
kind of tenses up. All my muscles are really tense and I just cannot relax. Tried all the breath work. Meditation doesn't do anything in that moment. Meditation's
Mhm.
good for like preventative and perspective, I guess, but in the moment, it's not going to do, calm your body. Um, Exercise, like doing jumping jacks, push-ups, like self-massage. I did all the stuff. Nothing calmed me down and ended up going to see a sports psychiatrist for a little bit. And it's funny, the psychiatrist, they teach you all those things anyway. They're like, oh, let's try some
Yeah.
meditations, try some breath work. I'm like, dude, I've been trying that. Like
Yeah.
that's not the problem. Like I have a good perspective, but for whatever reason, I just freak out like the moment it's time to perform. And he prescribed me benzos. I can't remember
Mhm.
which one, but one of the strong ones. I didn't know anything at the time. I'm a teenager. So I'm like, all right, yeah, cool. I'll take it. Hour
Mm.
before tournament. All right, whatever. Take it. And it worked really well. When I'd step up on the
Mm.
first tee, I was like, I don't feel a thing. Problem was, I didn't feel a thing for the whole round. And now I'm like dull. I noticed I'm like, I don't feel like being out here right now. I'm really unmotivated. I'm just not focused, sluggish. And I'm like, this isn't good. So you start looking up the side effects of benzos, and it's like, it's really bad for you. I mean, that is one of the symptoms, is it totally dulls the entire nervous system and the brain. And then, if you take it for more than like a month, suddenly you start having risks of, dependency. If you stop taking it after a month, there's withdrawals. You don't just stop taking a benzo. You have to like wean yourself off of it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I do not want to be on these for very long. So that's not a solution. And it just clicked in my mind. I'm like, there's nothing out there that is like effective for what I want. I mean, there's a lot of stress relief techniques and there's millions of things out there, but in the moment when I'm on the go, I'm on the golf course, wherever, nothing really was able to just pull me out of that. It didn't need to be very long. It just calm me down for like 5 minutes and I can take it from there.
Mm.
So that was my motivation. It was like, let's go to school, let's study what's physically going on inside my mind and body. I didn't want to be a psychologist because I wasn't interested in positive thinking. Like I'd already tried all those things and great. I mean, I'm huge on meditation and the power of positive thinking, visualization. Um, but it was the physical side I needed help with. So I thought, all right, let's go study the nervous system and figure out what's happening. Why does this happen? And are there ways you can shut that off? Because if you I can go from 0 to 100 in 5 seconds, but why can't I go from 100 to 0 in 5 seconds? Why does it take so long? Um, those are just some of the open questions I had. Went to school, studied biomedical engineering, just seemed like the right fit to kind of study this holistically. And it's pretty crazy. There's some wild technologies out there that interact with the nervous system. The first one I was interested in was called magnetic stimulation. You put these giant coils like up to your head, and it
Yeah.
sends these big pulses of magnetic energy. And you can shut off whole parts of your brain for a short amount of time. You can activate parts of your brain. So I was like, what if I just shut off my entire prefrontal cortex? Would that wipe out the stress and anxiety? And yeah, there's a lot of studies that show it can do that. So if you have any kind of anxiety or depression, magnetic stimulation is very effective. The problem was it's this giant machine. It's very, very expensive. And it's like, okay, that's not going to work. I'm not going to lug that around to the golf course. That would be kind of funny. It's like right before I tee off, I'm just like, hold on, guys, put this coil. I'm just like, pop, pop, pop. It's just like, all right, we're good. Like that would be really strange. But then maybe that would be a good marketing tactic if I had one of those. People would be like, what is he
Make
doing?
it make it look like a Darth Vader helmet and it might increase
Yeah.
marketing.
No, literally, they have these other machines where it's a helmet that comes down. It's this giant helmet with this huge tube that goes into this machine. It looks terrifying,
Yeah.
but those are FDA cleared for depression, for anxiety
Mhm.
disorders, some other things. But again, it didn't fit that use case. Learned about lots of other tools, but that's where I learned about the vagus nerve. And my first interaction with the vagus nerve, again, before I knew anything about it, it was just some studies I ran or I looked through where when you use electrical energy applied inside the ear, there's a small branch of the vagus nerve that when you activate it, physical symptoms of stress come down, like heart rate comes down, breathing rate, muscle tension, and a lot of other subjective things, like stress levels, anxiety levels come down. And in one of the studies, it was a really cool graph. It's like when you flip the switch, heart rate just drops in like 5 seconds. And it was like, whoa, that's insane. And that piqued my interest. started playing around with these tools, took them out on the golf course, had a little earbud I put in, and it was cool. I didn't get that like oof, that rush of calm. And but it was noticeable. I was like, all right, I can notice a little bit, but it wasn't overwhelming like I thought it would be. And I can explain kind of the mechanism of why, but I figured like, okay, the study demonstrated that it clearly has a fast effect, but it's not, doesn't seem to be working for me. Like, why? I want to feel that. That's what I want to feel. So started looking at the anatomy of that nerve, and inside the ear, you have these tiny little branches of the vagus nerve, but right underneath the ear in these cadaver studies, they show how it all kind of comes down, travels. It's called the tympanomastoid fissure. It's right behind the jawbone, that soft spot. And the nerve travels towards the brainstem. So when you hit the lower branch of the nerve, you're actually activating all the branches at once. It's like you're hitting the trunk of the tree. So instead of hitting just a little branch, when you come from beneath, you're hitting the whole trunk and all the branches at once. And so I thought, okay, let's try it right there and see what happens. Tried it right there, and it was like, boom, that's it. That's the spot. Heart rate drops. We have huge drops in muscle tension in the shoulders in the clinical studies we ran. Definitely the subjective, like relaxation was way higher when you hit here versus in the ear. Because in the ear, it's it's such a small area that it can feel kind of sharp sometimes. And you have to use like a wet saline, and then you're giving yourself a wet willy when you put it in. It's like not very comfortable. But
Ugh.
right underneath, you don't need any of that. You can just apply an electrode there, and you can hit the whole nerve, and it's a lot more comfortable, way faster, a lot stronger of a sensation. And yeah, just a lot more effective. So that was my project. It was like, all right, I found a good spot that works for me. There's no device that exists that targets that spot. So that's what we built. Um, the design kind of inputs were like, this is for somebody that is on the go. They're out there all the time. They don't really have time, or it's not practical to go find a quiet space for 20, 30 minutes. Like you're going, like you got to take care of this now. So we made it a tiny little device. It's like a little pocket sized tool. It's, I don't know, it fits in your palm pretty easily. And you just take the cap off. There's no power switch. The cap is the power switch. So it's automatically ready to go. No Bluetooth, no app connections. Like you don't want to have to set it up. It should just be going. And then you just hold it right under the nerve or right under the ear, and your whole ear just lights up. It's like, feels like it's jumping off your head, but in a good way. At least if you crank it up, it feels pretty strong, but it feels kind of like an ear massage from the inside out. And then you just hold it there, and you can do some slow breathing with it if you want to kind of accelerate that impact, or just hold it there, just and let it do its work. And just depending on the situation, it could work in as little as 60 seconds. The studies we did, we just kind of did it based on what was already done, but we did 5 minutes on each side for a total of 10 minutes. And we were able to demonstrate clinically meaningful reductions in your state anxiety after one use, which was really cool, compared to a placebo, which had no impact. Placebo is just a fake device, did nothing. So, pretty effective. It targets the nerve. It's going to calm the nervous system. And the use case is really meant for those people that are just on the go, and they're moving and they don't have time to sit around. There's other devices out there that, they do require some setup time. But for some individuals, say if you have like long COVID or a really damaged nervous system, you're going to need like an hour session at a time. This is not for those people because you don't want to hold this for an hour. That'd be kind of hard. So other tools might be beneficial, like if you're going to use it in your living room. But this is for those high stress professionals on the go that just need a quick hit of calm, or like panic attacks even, right? Like panic is a full blown nervous system through the roof, right? You don't want to sit in that, state for very long. And so if you can get relief as fast as possible, that's the best, right? And what we found in the vagus nerve stim research is that, the more vagal nerve branches you can activate at once, the faster you'll get the result. And the higher you can turn up the intensity, the faster you'll get the result. So in the ear, if you crank up the intensity, it hurts like heck. It's not comfortable. But
Oh.
right under the ear, you can crank the thing and it's comfortable. So it was just like, man, that's such a great little tool for those people that just get those panic feelings and just full blown sympathetic through the roof, just bring you back down to baseline quickly. Um, Super long answer to your question of why did I go into biomedical engineering, but um, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we've been doing for the last couple of years, just designing new products, really, really meant for those individuals that are, doing a lot with their life and they're just living with that constant stress and maybe don't have time to try these other free techniques or, definitely don't want to go take drugs. That's not good unless you absolutely need it. Um, and a lot of these clinical programs too, like those are very expensive, every month to get like the full stack, work with a chiropractor or go to a functional neurologist, get all the equipment and stuff. That's thousands per month. And maybe you don't need that. Maybe you just need to stimulate your vagus nerve. So,
I have so
It's
many
so
things,
cool.
but
Yeah.
I want to hear what Hadley has to say first, and then I have notes.
Ah,
But
I love it.
Hadley,
You always have
Hadley,
notes.
what's coming up? I know I have my brain, and it's on a piece of paper today that has a big N on it, and today
oh,
it's for
nice.
Nick. Yeah, it's for
Amazing.
Nick.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
So honored.
Oh, I love it. No, I'm so impressed. I'm like, wow, we're speaking with a true genius right now.
Yeah.
I just think it's so cool that you created that product based on everything that you have learned and everything that you've experienced. And I'm like, okay, I need to get my hands on this product. Um, we are like not super big on products in general on like on this podcast. I feel like we're always a little bit wary. We're always a little bit like, what is this person trying to like push? But we really believe in this product.
Nice.
So it's really, really cool to hear about. And you had mentioned that well, you had mentioned wanting to talk a little bit more about um like how the actual like the physical how the vagus nerve works and everything. I'm also really curious about, okay, so with polyvagal theory, you had also mentioned like wanting to, that you had a very unique perspective on the vagus nerve and everything. So I wanted to get a little bit more insight into that because my issue a lot of times is that I will go into more of that collapsed nervous system state. So instead of the like hyper sympathetic, I kind of like surpass that and go into like I'm just like my blood pressure actually decreases and I go into that state. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that and if the product helps with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So my unique perspective is that of an engineer. So I look at
Mm.
like numbers, I look at what's physically happening, mechanisms, I'm not so much in the high level, like, hey, let's go socialize and frolic in the fields and that'll activate your vagus nerve. Like, sure, there's a relaxing component to that and the vagus nerve plays a role. But I'm like, what's happening? Like, what is going on? So to simplify, you probably have heard this and understand, but the vagus nerve connects the brain to the rest of the upper body, connects the brain to the heart, the lungs, the gut, and it's bidirectional, right? So it's constantly taking information from the body to the brain and from the brain to the body. So you have I call it an ascending branch of the vagus nerve going up and a descending branch going down. They're not like separate. They're structured in the same, you know, branch of the nerve, but it's like a freeway, right? Like in the same freeway, you've got one direction and the other direction. So this is super interesting. If when your heart rate comes down, the vagus nerve is active, but it's not the vagus nerve is active. It's the descending branch of the vagus nerve that activates. It's not the ascending branch. When your heart rate increases, the descending branch shuts off for a short amount of time. So That's the branch of the nerve that signals or takes the signal from the brain to the body, telling it to slow down. The ascending branch is what closes the feedback loop and tells the brain that what just happened happened. So if my heart rate drops because the descending branch shuts or turns on for a second, the ascending branch tells the brain, hey, heart rate just dropped. Everything's good. You did your job. In some cases, like here's where vagus nerve damage and like dysfunction kind of plays a role. It can get complicated, but the simplest way is for a lot of people who are stuck in that fight or flight state, heart rate's always high.
Mhm.
Often it's because parts of the descending branch are damaged. Um, and that could be from long COVID, that could be from a concussion, an injury. It could be from a lifelong lifestyle of chronic stress, like just constant stress is just having an impact on your nervous system. And when the descending branch is damaged or not functioning properly, that means that when the brain signals to the body to relax, the signal is not going through. So your heart rate stays really high, muscle tension stays really high, everything's fired up. So to fix that, you have to strengthen the descending vagus nerve. There are handful of ways to do that. That's definitely the hardest one to do because it's deep in the neck. So in my experience, the most effective way to do that is with a technology called pulsed electromagnetic field stimulation, PEMF. You've probably seen it or heard about it. Like a lot of brands put out these little mats and stuff. That's really good because it pumps through your whole body and kind of activates all the nerves wherever you're applying it. And so you can get deep into the neck and strengthen that part of the vagus nerve. That's where the descending branch is. So that's a good one, but it does take several weeks to potentially several months before you can see improvements in strengthening a damaged nerve. On the other end, you have the ascending branch. If the ascending branch is damaged, then the feedback loop is broken and you're typically stuck in whatever state the brain puts you in. So
Mhm.
you might, if the vagus nerve shuts off and you go into fight or flight, the body goes into fight or flight, but the ascending branch doesn't signal to the brain that the body's in fight or flight. So the brain is like, keep sending fight or flight signals, and you're just stuck there. So to fix that, you just stimulate the ascending branch, and it will tell the brain, hey, the body is doing what you told it to do. Now it's time to regulate. Um, and then, alternatively, if the brain tells your body to relax, but the ascending branch doesn't relay that information to the brain, you're going to be stuck in that super dull state. So, like chronic fatigue,
Mhm.
right? Like that's where the vagus nerve can play a role in fatigue. And so, the hardest part, I haven't perfectly figured out how to tell which branch of your vagus nerve is damaged because that would be the next thing, right? Like, what are your symptoms? What are you dealing with? And you can kind of get an idea what type of vagus nerve exercises or tools should you be using to maximize your time. Um, the simplest answer would be do both because you cannot go wrong with both.
Mhm.
Stimulate the ascending branch, which is what our product does. It targets the auricular branch, which goes to the brain, and stimulate the descending branch. You can stimulate the descending branch through slow breathing. That's because when you exhale, that's what triggers the descending branch to calm your heart rate. Heart rate always drops when you exhale. But
Mhm.
if your vagus nerve is damaged, slow exhaling doesn't work because it's damaged. It doesn't work right away. You would have to do very rigorous breath work for several weeks to months to strengthen your vagus nerve through breath work
Mhm.
alone. So just depending on, if you're not responding well to breath work, I might say go look for someone who has PEMF. Like a lot of chiropractors have it, functional neurologists. They're super expensive, but if you can afford it, you can always get one for home. But when you combine upper auricular vagal nerve stim with that descending, so I usually just say stimulate the auricular using VeRelief while slow breathing. That's like the golden combination because
Mhm.
you're strengthening both at the same time, which will benefit pretty much any vagus nerve related issue. So hopefully that wasn't like too complicated, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about like those different branches very much. They all kind of lump them in together. And it's like, Well, it's not really all lumped in together. There's subtle differences. Um, but things like humming and slow breathing will activate descending. Um, cold plunge is not a direct vagal nerve activation exercise. So if your vagus nerve is damaged, that's not going to help. It'll make things worse. If your vagus nerve is relatively healthy and you're just a high stress person, cold plunge activates the vagus nerve when you get out of it. It's because it sends your body into fight or flight when you go into the cold. And then your body naturally kicks in the recovery when you get out through vagus nerve activation. So it's kind of like a natural way to activate it without directly targeting it. Um, Same thing with like wind sprints. You look at long distance runners or sprinters, they have the highest vagal tone of anybody I've ever measured. And it's because they're constantly putting their body into fight or flight by sprinting, which means every time they do that, they have to recover, which is what activates vagus nerve. And so you measure their vagal tone, and their vagal tone's really good because they're always subjecting themselves to that fight or flight and then rest and digest like all the time. So, hey, wind sprints maybe could be a good tool uh, if you're looking for a free technique. But I don't know anybody that's like, I can't wait to go wind sprint today.
Oh my gosh, my mind is blown right now. And I love that you also mentioned the cold plunging is not actually effective for everyone and can make it worse,
Yeah.
because I do think that people think of it as like a cure-all. And in Ayurveda, which is a lot of the work that I do, it's like actually there's a lot more nuance than that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if there's real damage going on, then it might not be effective and it might
Yeah,
make
it
it
won't be
worse.
effective. And if your descending is broken, you definitely don't want to do cold plunge because that will just
Mm,
totally exacerbate the fight or flight response. It's
yeah,
awesome if you have a generally healthy nervous system, but you're just stressed out a lot.
right.
Um, but we work with a lot of clinicians that specifically work with patients with actual, vagal nerve damage. Long
Yeah.
COVID seems to be the most common one because
Mm.
that messed everybody up. And it's like, you don't want to do cold plunge. I've talked to a lot of long COVID people who've tried the cold plunge and they're like, yeah, that did not help me at all. And I'm
Wow,
sure,
fascinating.
some people
Yeah.
will benefit and it's very nuanced, but
Do you have an
Totally.
impression of the mechanism of what happened with long COVID and vagus nerve?
no, I've never really studied the mechanism of long COVID. I mean, I know being a virus like that attacks cells in the body and
Mm.
um, it attacks the whole body. I'm pretty sure, like everything, and gets affected by COVID. But the when the vagus nerve, if it gets damaged at all from a virus or from an injury, you're gonna see a flared up nervous system. Like you're gonna be stuck in that sympathetic. I guess there's two types of outcomes, right? If your descending is broken, then you're probably going to be stuck in fight or flight most of the time.
Mm,
If the ascending is broken, then you're probably going to have these huge swings where you're in fight or flight half the time, and then you have severe fatigue half the time, which is
mm,
what a lot of people experience. They're like, I don't want to get up. I'm super tired. And the next thing they know, they're like full sympathetic mode. It's like, what is going on? But yeah, I haven't really, studied too intently on, the mechanism for how COVID messed everything up, but
mm,
um, there's definitely some damage that happens to the vagus nerve with COVID. And the severity is different for everybody. And I don't know why in some people it's really bad and some it's not. Because I got it twice and it didn't have any major damage for me. Um, but some people I know it's like sent them to the emergency room and like it was bad.
Mm.
It's like, oh my gosh, like I don't know. Um, but yeah, it's definitely an interesting kind of phenomenon.
I'm
yeah.
thinking about autonomic nervous system and the immune system holding hands, where especially with COVID, is this was a very traumatic thing for the world. We're going through this worldwide crisis, and So the immune system is getting activated, but at the same time, the nervous system is going into fight, flight, freeze. And so we're not trusting our doctors, we're not trusting our bodies. We can't even go to the grocery store. When people deliver groceries, we wash them before we bring them in. And so what we see sometimes, especially in the field of psychoneuroimmunology, which is that relationship between our emotions, our nervous system, and our immune system, is that even long after the infection has passed, the nervous system can use the mechanisms that it learned from the immune system to continue a process so we can still feel sick. And it can happen in the reverse too, where if somebody has, which way did I just say it first? Did I say the immune system first? Because I want to do the opposite, but I just missed it.
Yes. Yeah. Immune system first.
Yeah. So on the other hand, if somebody goes through something emotionally traumatic, the immune system is part of what helps us mount a response to survive in that fight, flight, freeze. And so that could be the release of histamine, which can be stimulating like adrenaline. And so then even after the trauma is past, the immune system can keep going. So
Mhm.
I'm wondering if it's kind of a bidirectional, like you were saying with vagus nerve, is very bidirectional. And I'm wondering if there's a bidirectionality of the immune system process that could be taking place here, and how using vagus nerve stimulation and repairing of that ascending and the descending branch could actually have clinical use in people who appeared to be suffering from a prolonged or a protracted immune system issue, where maybe they haven't identified it as nervous system, but that they often go together. Does how have you seen anything with that yet? I know we're still in the early infancy of this.
I haven't really looked at that specifically. It's kind of the first time
Yeah.
I'm hearing about that connection, but I
Yeah.
think definitely right about that. I know, people with higher vagal tone
Mhm.
tend to not get sick as often. Sickness is not as severe, doesn't last as long. And, I think it's just because, the nervous system, it just goes back to the basics, right? Like your body can't heal when your sympathetic nervous system is on for very long because every part of your body down to the cellular level is in a stressed out state and it's in a defense mode. And it's
Mhm.
not like your body doesn't heal unless you're in the recover mode, that rest and digest, relaxed state. So that's why
Mhm.
sleep is so important because sleep is when your body recovers and when it heals itself. There's definitely a connection between any kind of immune system dysfunction with, nervous system dysfunction. It just like long COVID. I know like vagal nerve stim is a huge, you know, technology right now for anybody with long COVID, and it has been ever since COVID. Like COVID really put vagal nerve stimulation technology and just techniques in general on the map because, it's not just nervous system issues, it's immune system issues.
Yeah.
People are prone to getting sick and their symptoms get, you know, exacerbated and they last really long. And somehow the vagus nerve is implicated in just helping the body heal better. Um, so yeah, I know like when people with concussion, I've talked to a lot of those people, and once they had their injury, they get sick a lot. And
Mhm.
things, that typically wouldn't make them sick, suddenly they're in bed a lot more frequently and they get colds a lot more frequently. There's definitely a link between the immune system and the nervous system. Probably, to my knowledge, there's no direct line, from the vagus nerve to the immune system. But like inflammation is, a big factor that determines the healthier immune system. If you've got a lot of inflammation in the body, you're going to get sick a lot more frequently. Like you're going to have a lot more pain. And I know vagal nerve stim is, really effective for reducing inflammation in the body. It's not like an instant thing. You don't stimulate it once and suddenly the inflammation's gone. It's like kind of a daily habit, to maintain reduced inflammation. But No, it's definitely interesting. And at some point, I'd like to look into that. But for now, we're just kind of focused on helping people get out of that sympathetic state as fast as
Yeah.
possible without drugs.
There is one interface that's a little bit newer in the research, which is there's called a neuropod. And we've seen that in the enteric nervous system, which is the nervous system of the gut, which I
Yeah.
think you probably know a lot more about. But for those who are listening that don't know, is that there are these little neuropods, and the vagus nerve will innervate or connect with the neuropod. And then that neuropod connects with the enteric nervous system, which is then interfacing directly with the gut microbiome. And so there's like all these different points where we have the opportunity to go in and say, okay, like, where can we leverage this for healing? Or how is this maybe not working optimally so that we could get to a real root cause of that? So I love everything that you're saying. And I have a couple of testimonials from, so you were kind enough to share this with me and I used it. And so I have the little portable one that you were showing, and I didn't get detained at TSA, so that was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was really happy about that. And I put it in my panic pack. And so I teach people how to activate brainstem, activate vagus nerve through the sense, touch, fidget, smell, temperature. But this little guy fits super perfectly in there. And then we were going to be flying over a giant storm, and everyone who's listened to this podcast probably has an idea how I feel about flying. I don't really love it. And I was like, well, I'm just going to use the vagus nerve stimulator and just see how it goes. And I wasn't feeling anxious or activated, but I was anticipating getting anxious and activated.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there and I just pull this little device out and I place it under my ear, kind of where you were gesturing. And it felt like a million spiders crawling up the cartilage of my ear.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is fun. And I didn't feel like that drop in the moment. And so I'm like cranking it up and then I'm switching sides. And then the flight is over. And I hadn't been stressed. I hadn't really noticed the turbulence. I hadn't noticed bumps. My husband is like side eyeing me, and I'm just like, da, 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 playing with my gadget. And so then I'm like, this thing is pretty cool. And so I'm at the Integrative Medicine for Mental Health conference, and the executive director is jet lagged. She's from London. She's jet lagged. So she's in kind of this like wired and tired kind of state. Like she's just running on like pure adrenaline and just trying to survive. And her heart is palpitating. And she's like, Dr. Nicole, I don't know how I'm going to make it. And so
Yeah.
I was like, I have this fun gadget. You should borrow it. And so she uses it. And within like 2 minutes of applying this thing to her neck, she's like, oh my God, my heart isn't palpitating. And she's yawning and she's feeling relaxed. And then her boyfriend is like, what is this? I want it. So then
Nice.
he's using it and he's feeling calm. And so everybody's happy. And then one more story. And so I've been engaging in very bad lifestyle habits. I've been like on my phone at night and just making poor choices as one does. And
I got
I was,
Taco Bell the other day, so same. Sorry.
Confessions time.
My bad.
yeah, well, Hadley, I'm sure that you did yoga for 10 minutes less than you should have. Right? Hadley's amazing. We all want to be more like Hadley because you're so disciplined. I say this in jest, but also sincerely, I want to be just like you, Hadley. And so I have insomnia. I'm like laying there, I'm like rolling around, and I'm like, I have an emergency prescription for Xanax if I really, really need it. And I'm like, do I want to take this Xanax? And I'm like, I don't know. Maybe I'll play with my vagus nerve device. So I go and I get it. And I'm like laying there and I'm like yawning and I'm like pretty tired, but I don't know if it's really working. Meh. So I set it down on my pillow and then I wake up the next morning. I'd like crashed
Oh,
out and it
that's
works
awesome.
really well. So I tell these stories because these are like different case scenarios
Sure.
where they were helpful. And then also for people who may not get that like in the moment, like positive feedback, like, oh, I feel instantly calm, like my colleague did, you still may be getting benefit. in the nervous system. Like I didn't notice the
Yeah.
flight, I fell asleep. So I would encourage those who've tried this or who are interested in trying it is give it some time. And so Nick, what would you suggest like before people really decide is like if they use it X amount of times or X amount of days?
Well, we give people 60 days to try it and we give them their money back if they don't like it. So
Okay.
it's like you got a lot of time to play around with
Mhm.
Yeah.
this. It should work. I'd say 90% of the time it's going to work after anywhere from 1 to 3 uses.
Mhm.
Oftentimes people will use it when they open up out of the box and they'll try it.
Yeah.
But if your body is not in a stressed out state, probably not going to notice a whole lot.
Yeah.
I mean, like if you're relaxed and then you do a vagal nerve activation, you're not going to suddenly be like ultra relaxed. It's just like you're already relaxed. Your vagus nerve's already doing its work. So people often will take it with them for a few days and try it in various situations, before sleep, in the car, at work, anytime that feeling comes up. And then that's when they know they're like, oh, yeah, that feels really nice. So yeah, I usually say when you first open it, try it out just to get a feel for how to use it and what it feels like so
Mhm.
that when the situation comes up, you're comfortable with whipping it out real fast and you can just use
Yeah.
it. Because it's a really strong sensation. If you're not like prepared for that strong sensation, it can kind of like freak people out a little bit. I mean, I get made fun of all the time. They're like, it's like a taser for your stress. I'm like, yeah, put your stress down, doesn't it? That's usually how I
Yeah.
Ease your
respond.
stress.
Yeah.
That's
So
awesome.
it is pretty strong, but it's meant to be strong. And you don't have to crank it. I mean, start low, and then slowly turn it up, get used
Yeah.
to it. For me, I crank the thing. I'm like, give it to me. But I always have to
Yeah.
tell people when they're first starting, it's like, hey, start very slow. It's a strong sensation and work your way up.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'd say for sure within the first week, if you're using it daily, you'll notice the benefits. If it doesn't work, oftentimes it's not that it doesn't work, it's that you may need a different type of protocol based on how your nervous system is, because everybody will respond in some way to auricular vagal nerve stim. It's just like we get a lot of people with long COVID and other issues that try our product. The problem is when you have real vagus nerve damage, especially if it's the descending branch, it takes it can take months of
Mhm.
consistent practice before it becomes strengthened.
Mm.
So I'll plug this real quick. I'll mention it, but for those individuals who want longer sessions, let's say you're on a plane and you don't want to hold something the whole time, or you're someone who's like, I need an hour a day because my nervous system is really weak. So we made a hands-free model, and that's what I'm wearing right here. So we, instead of making a shock collar, we made a pair of headphones. And you can see right here, it just puts it right under the spot on the vagus nerve. I'm hitting both sides now at the same time. So I'm essentially doubling the amount of activation towards the brainstem. So you get faster and longer lasting effects with this. But it's hands-free. I can sit back, keep it at a low level for like an hour, 2 hours if I want. Connect it to your phone, listen to any song, any meditation, any app that you want to connect it to. You don't have to connect it to an app. You can just do it. But when you combine the audio with the vagal nerve stem and slow breathing, it's like that is the most powerful way to strengthen the nervous system.
Mm.
And so we've been testing these for the last 6 months, sold about 200 of these in like a concept test. A lot of doctors and people, in our list have been testing them out. But we had one lady who had just horrible vagus nerve damage and trauma,
Mhm.
bad relationship situation. She got long COVID and she got injured. And it's just like, this girl is a wreck. And most people are not committed to like 2 to 3 months of a daily practice. They just want results now. But this girl was very like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And yeah, within about a couple weeks, her baseline anxiety levels came down. But one of the problems with her situation was she lost a lot of her memory and she couldn't remember a lot of things. And I remember like she called me a few months later and she was just like crying with happiness. And she's like, I cannot tell you, but like my memory has come back. And it is the headphones because I've done everything for years and I'm way calmer. I'm sleeping better. My digestion has improved tremendously. I'm remembering a lot of memories that I couldn't recall. And she's like, I'm finally able to go back to work and work a full day. And it's it's for her protocol, it was an hour a day, like every single day for like 4 months. Took a long time, but she strengthened her vagus nerve by activating it on a daily basis, and her nervous system was improved. And I think that's the understanding that a lot of people just don't have is they think stimulate the vagus nerve, you'll get benefits immediately. That's
Mm.
true for calming yourself down, but if you want that lasting impact, you just have to work on it. And you honestly you have to work on it every single day. Because if you think
Mhm.
about it, let's say I strengthen my vagus nerve, like I'm working out a muscle, right? I get giant biceps because I did curls every day for 6 months. If I just stop working out my biceps forever, my muscle mass is going to go away and then I'm going to be weak again. So it's like, if you want to maintain that strength, you have to do it as part of your lifestyle. The good news is once you've strengthened it, you can dial it back a little bit on how much you're doing. You just can maintain at that point. So I think I'm really excited about, these headphones that are going to come out because it's a little stronger. It's a lot more fun when you combine it with your favorite music. And this is going to do that really heavy lifting for you. And you don't have to step aside. I can keep working. I can just put these on and keep doing what I'm doing. I don't have to, set aside an hour to do crazy breath work routines. And then once I've maintained it, then you just do this for a couple minutes every day,
Yeah.
and you're maintaining that strong nervous system everywhere you go. Um, so I forgot what the question was again. I got a little
Oh
That's okay.
my,
carried away,
oh
but
my gosh, that was just so. I was
I just
actually.
I just got on the wait list for the headphones. I just went to your website. I'm on the
oh,
wait list
nice.
officially.
Yeah, there's a little waitlist button on our products page for the headphones. That we're gonna release them. No date yet, but early next year. So
That's amazing. So here's the $1 million question. Are you ready?
yes.
Okay. How's your golf game now?
Well, now it's not great, but
Oh.
when I stopped golfing, I was like, I'm done. I'm like this. It's over. I shot my lowest round I've ever shot in my life, like a week later. It's like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me right now? Like, I don't, for perspective for anyone who knows, I shot in that round, I shot a 64 on my home course, which is 8 under par, but I
Yeah,
shot
that's
seven
really good.
under in my first 9 holes. That's like, that was to me, I was like, I'm literally as good as any tour player right now. Like I just shot 29 on 9 holes. And then, I fizzled out a little bit at the end there, but, um, I mean, it's just crazy. Like once I just let go of all that stuff, I came back and performed better. And over the next several years, I started learning about all these techniques and how to actually handle that stress. So I know the talent is there. At some point in my life, I want to go back and like apply everything I've learned and like, let's go compete and just see what
Mm.
happens. Am I going to win a tour event? No, probably not. But hey, if I could get into one, that'd be a pretty cool story. Like, hey, had all these problems and played around and, you know, was able to calm myself under pressure and get back to performing well. And I think
Mm.
this is what's so cool is if you're an elite performer, oftentimes you don't need to keep practicing the thing to get better. You need to practice the mind to get better. Because I will still go out and if I'm loose and I'm feeling myself, I will still shoot pretty well under par. And I don't practice anymore, like ever. But I have all these calming and visualization techniques that I've learned that I'm able to dial up what I've learned in the past and I can lock in the zone now better than I've ever been able to.
Mm.
And so vagal nerve stim is a big part of that. That was a study we ran. We measured people's ability to get into a flow state, and it was double what a placebo was. So it's like you stimulate your vagus nerve, you have a better chance at getting into a flow state, which is where you perform your best. And it's just like, man, this is so cool. Like if we can just train people's minds and their nervous systems, maybe you don't need to practice so much to unlock those peak performance levels. You just need to chill out and tap into your, you know, your focus states. So anyway, just kind of interesting.
That's brilliant. I feel like that's such a good place to end is with people thinking about that key piece. Hads, before we close up, any last questions?
Ooh, I feel like I could talk with you forever. I'm just really excited about I'm gonna go buy the product and I got on the wait list. I think I do believe that my nervous system has been damaged by some mold exposures, and so I'm like the headphone thing sounds really, really, really amazing to me. So yeah, no, thank you so much for being here. This has been a very enlightening conversation. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me and giving me just some time to share my story and perspective. Hopefully that was an interesting perspective on the vagus nerve and you know, you can think through a little more like is this vagus nerve technique really what I should be investing time in or maybe that one.
Right.
Um, and if possible, do them all. Do stack them all together, you know, and because
Mhm.
that'll give you the best benefit. But yeah, for mold, I mean, you mentioned mold. I've got a lady who's a practitioner who specifically works with mold patients, and they use our headphones as part of their practice. So
Yeah, I
I
had
think
a
it'll
hunch
be,
that it's probably very helpful for that.
yeah, yeah, I think it can provide some benefit.
Yeah. Oh, amazing.
This has been great. Everyone, thank you for listening and definitely go and find Nick. I'll put all of your contact information. But to reserve your doodad, go to the hoolest.com, Hoolest. And you guys are over on Instagram too. And so I'll make sure to have all that info there.
Awesome.
And then you two can be the coolest.
You can be the
Woo!
Hoolest.
Yes. All right, everyone. We'll see you later.
Awesome. Thanks,
Bye.
guys. See ya.